Today we're talking termination of parental rights.
The conversation starts now.
Only on Foster Life. Welcome to Foster Life. Today is Wednesday.
Good old hump day.
Oh yeah, it's almost the end of February already. It seems like we just had Christmas. And now
Yeah.
we've already been in our studio almost a month.
That's
And-
crazy to think.
Yeah, and we've done all of these shows and stuff. So did you hear what happened to me this weekend?
No.
My Jeep got stolen
Oh, yeah,
out of
I
my
saw that.
job. Or out of my garage.
Your garage.
Out of my job. Out of my garage. Somebody came in while we were home and came in to the garage and took the Jeep out of there and stole it.
My
But
goodness.
we did find it. And it's gonna take some work. I mean, it was a little rough. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
but,
I think I saw the pictures on Facebook and it wasn't looking as good as it normally does.
Right. So normally I wouldn't start the show with something, but you know what? There's still good people in this world, Tristan. Do you know how many people have reached out to me that want to help me restore my Jeep back to the way it was? And hey, I got some tires and rims in my garage. I'll bring them by.
That's incredible.
Just pay me a little gas money, you know, or whatever. And so I guess the moral of the story is even though this has been kind of a stressful thing with the Jeep getting stolen right out of our garage, and it makes you feel weird knowing that somebody just comes into your place and just takes it. But there's still a lot of really good people, and Facebook is the bomb.
Yes. Well, I saw how many people shared whenever it got stolen.
Yeah, because I put it on there, and then I shared it on like 30 shopping sites or garage sale sites or whatever. So a guy was mudding on his motorcycle. He saw the Jeep, put a picture. A guy said, hey, I just saw on sites this guy, and that's his Jeep. The guy's like, well, what's his name? He looks up my name. He sends me a message. He's like, meet me out here. And we met him, and we found the Jeep. So not even the police found the Jeep.
Yeah.
It was
That's
actually
incredible. You honestly
one of our
found it so
Facebook
fast.
people.
It seemed like it just happened one day, and then like 2 days later, it was
They
found.
found it and everything. But
Normally, whenever a car's stolen, it takes, sometimes months before you even find it.
So that's the good news. I mean, there's a lot of good people in this world, and we can't let things like that get us discouraged, because the long and the short of it is people do want to help people for the most part, and we really have seen that, and we've seen kind of people come around today. So today we're going to talk about something not so fun. It's actually very hard for me as a foster parent, and I'm certain if you have ever been to a termination of rights trial, TPR they call it, it's very sad. Because basically you're having a trial to see if they're going to terminate the rights of the bio parents. And if you think about that for a minute, that's huge. You're taking these parents out of these kids' lives, and it's a big thing. But my friend Nick, and your friend Nick, the nudie.
Hey, he's my friend too.
I know, and he's an attorney, And he's going to come on today, and he's going to kind of help explain, because I've been in a lot of these support groups. You know how I go to the ones like coast to coast?
Yes.
And there's a lot of questions about TPR. Everybody's a little confused about the steps and how you get there, and when you need to get an attorney, and when this needs to happen and that needs to happen. So I'm hoping that he can kind of walk us through a couple of scenarios and then kind of go step by step with us and make it just a little bit easier to understand.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
And I think he'll be the one for the job.
I think so. When we come back, we're talking TPR today on foster life. TPR, termination of parental rights on foster life. I have to tell you, the very first time I went to one of these trials, before I get started, I'm serious, folks. I sat in the back of the courtroom, and I mean, tears are just like running down my face. It was much more emotional than I thought it was going to be.
Well, could you imagine how emotional it'd be for the child too?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're sitting there crying and excited and maybe even like nervous. I could only imagine how the child was.
Right, and too, but for the parent.
Yeah.
I mean, even though the situation was the situation, and we knew what was in the best interest of the child, I still had grief for the parent.
Yeah, it's a really hard day.
Yeah.
It really is.
And it is. It's nothing to be to take lightly. It's something that you need to consider. I chose to be there because I want to, when my kids are in their mid-20s or 30s or 40s or whatever, and they come and they say, "Dad, what happened?" I know that I was at that trial, and I could kind of get all the pieces and kind of get information, and I have that now, so that when my kids want to know, I can talk to them about it. And there'll probably be a day when I'll share that stuff with my kids, if they want to know. If they don't want to know, that's up to them too. So, what happens is there's a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
So let's go from the point that the goal changes from reunification to adoption.
Okay.
So the team has met together, and they've decided they want to go to the court, and they want to change the goal from reunification to adoption. So then what happens next?
Well, that's usually called a permanency hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when the court receives a report. This is in Greene County,
Right.
in Missouri, so it's a little different in different counties.
Right,
But the court will receive a report with a recommendation from the caseworker,
right,
whether to find exceptions and to not file the termination, to give the parents more time for a reason or another, or whether it's been enough time and there's not enough progress and the termination needs to be filed.
okay.
And then the judge makes that decision
Mhm.
and says, I'm not going to order a TPR file now, or I'm ordering in Greene County the juvenile office to file a termination of parental rights petition.
Mhm. And so once that's filed, so the judge has decided we're gonna change the goal to adoption. Do visits end with the kid and the parents at that time?
No, not usually. As long as the visits were still there and not canceled previously, there's still efforts with the biological parents, and they're still working, hopefully, even after the termination is ordered, filed, and during that process. And I've had cases where the parents, very late in the game, turned things around and got reunification. So yeah, there's always hope for them. It's a turning point. So it's kind of one of those wake up times. You hope if you haven't woke up yet, today's your day.
Right.
So can the child choose not to see the bio parents if that's something that they'd rather not do once the goal is for adoption?
Not usually. Usually, if there's an issue between the parents and the child, they like to try and resolve things in family therapy.
Yes.
And to work something out with a professional.
Okay.
So that's a lot of pressure to put on a child to give them the authority to say when they're going to cut visits off or not. And a lot of times kids are angry with their parents, and there's things that need to be worked out.
Yes.
And a lot of times they do get worked out in family therapy, and they're able to overcome those things.
Good.
Yeah. And the only case that I've seen it, we had a therapist that had recommended to the team and to the court that the visits didn't continue because she felt it was harmful to the child. And so in that case they did, but most likely they keep those visits going and they keep working it. And even in our one case, it was when we changed the goal from reunification to adoption, that's when the mom decided to go get treatment and check into treatment and actually stay at a facility and work that. So I think that's really an important note that Nick makes, is just because the goal has changed to adoption, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be adoption. It all kind of falls back on those bio parents and what they choose to do.
Yeah, and it's kind of for them that, like I said, that wake-up call that time is running out. This termination petition is going to be filed,
right? And
we're moving forward with this. They don't want to leave these kids in limbo indefinitely.
Right.
So at that point, the parents either get into gear or continue progress and work towards reunification, or there's that other goal of adoption.
So then the next step is the parents need to be served. Is that correct?
Yeah, the juvenile office in Greene County will file the termination petition, and then the parents will get served. They'll fill out applications. If they're unable to afford an attorney of their own, they can apply at the court, and they can get a court-appointed attorney. Guardian ad litem will be appointed for the child.
Right.
Usually the same guardian ad litem that was in the abuse and neglect case will just transfer over.
Right.
And a lot of times the parent's attorney from the abuse and neglect case will transfer over too.
Right.
So,
yep.
Yeah.
And then a state's attorney gets involved, right?
Well, in Greene County, it's just the juvenile office.
Oh, okay.
Proceeds with the termination.
Yeah, and so some, like in the 39th district, which is like Aurora, then they have like a state's person, right?
It is a little different. I think in some counties, Children's
smaller,
Division brings the case.
Yeah.
So yeah, it varies.
So it depends on that, and then and at this point, there's no reason for the foster parents to get any type of representation at this point yet, because we've not even gotten to that part.
Well, I mean, I guess at any point, if they want to get a consultation to find out what rights they might have or what might be their best advice at a certain point, they could do that.
Right.
But as far as becoming parties, it might be a bit premature.
Right. Yep, exactly. When we come back, we're going to talk more about TPR with our buddy Nick right after this on Foster Life.
The real national emergency is foster care. Learn more today.
Foster Life with Tristan and Nick. Today we're talking about TPR. It's not a really fun subject to talk about. It's a pretty serious topic. One thing that Nick pointed out is that the parents will get served, and depending on your state or your county, you might have a little police officer or a server person come to your house as well. We were kind of taken back the first time when a cop came to our house, and we're thinking, what the kids do? They're knocking on the door, and oh, we're just here to serve you, and then it was actually the papers for all of that. So after everybody's been served, what's our next step?
Usually after service, they'll kind of gather the attorneys together in a scheduling conference. Bring your calendars, and they'll check to see how long they think the trial will last, a day, 2 days, half a day, and they'll go ahead and schedule determination at that time.
And it really just depends on the case and how long it's gone on. We've had ones that have lasted for the afternoon.
Yeah.
And then the last one that I just went to, it lasted for 2 full days, and then the judge still had us come back for another couple hours on another day. So we're talking like 2.5 days. So it just depends on how much evidence they have, how many witnesses they have, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get to the trial. What's that going to look like once we're at the TPR trial?
Well, in Greene County, everybody shows up with their attorneys, and the juvenile office puts on their evidence, and the parents are able to respond and put on their evidence. At some point, the guardian ad litem is allowed to put on evidence and make a recommendation as to what they believe is in the best interest of the children. And then at that point, the judge will close the proceeding and usually go back and review everything and render a judgment at some later date.
Right. And those judgments can take, I mean, we have one right now, and he's taken his time. I mean, it's been out there for a month, and he's just kind of looking over everything, making sure he has all his ducks in a row. So sometimes those don't just happen overnight.
Well, and sometimes the longer they take, maybe the better. I mean, if he has a whole bunch of evidence, it's best to kind of leave it alone and look over it for a long period of time, I would think.
Yeah, and it's a really big decision, like you said. It's a permanent thing.
Right.
It's about in civil law. It's about as extreme as you can get.
Right.
In the law. So.
Yeah, and it's something that's going to affect these people for the rest of their life.
Yeah, and the children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody involved for the rest of their life. The foster parent, the bio parent, the children, it's the rest of their life. It's going to affect them. And so I think every judge that I've seen wants to make sure that they're making the very best decision for the child and for the family. And I've never seen a judge yet that has taken this lightly. No, and it's a big responsibility. I mean, there's a lot of things judges do. I have to think TPRs are one of the least favorite things to do. It's a huge responsibility. Yeah, it is. And as we are going through that process, I think so. Once the judge has made his decision and the judgment is TPR, so he's decided that that's the judgment. Then what happens next?
Well, at that point, whether a parent voluntarily terminates or whether it's involuntary and there's sufficient evidence that the judge says, I find enough evidence to terminate, there's a judgment that does that. It terminates the parental rights.
Right.
The parents are then entitled to appeal that decision.
Right.
And in Greene County, at least, they can be appointed attorneys to help them in that appeal process. So it can go on through the courts for a while.
Now they have up to 45 days to appeal, is that right, from the judgment?
Well, there's notices involved. It's kind of complicated.
It's
less than that. Yeah, there's the key for the parents and the attorneys that are there with them at the trial usually let them know If you intend to appeal, if the decision is not to your liking, you need to let the juvenile office know immediately
Right.
that you would like to appeal and get an attorney appointed.
Right. At this point, so once the judge has made this decision, whether they appeal or not, this is when E and I have made the decision that we're going to contact our attorney and start that paperwork. And the reason we do that, our attorney, the way he kind of works is he gets all the paperwork ready and done, so that once our waiting period is over, we're on the next docket for adoption. So that it's pretty much, and the reason why he does that is kind of interesting, because I joked with him and I said, man, you move quick after this is done. These kids are kind of in limbo, and they know that they're being adopted, and they know you want to adopt them and stuff. Behaviors are a little rocky during this process. I'm not going to lie to you. I've been through it a few times already. And so you want those ducks in a row so that moves pretty quickly afterwards, so that we can kind of move on. Because once that adoption's done, you're going to get a break, and the behaviors are going to get better, and everybody's going to rest easy, because nobody's in limbo anymore. And so you want to kind of have those in a row.
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned the first time that you went to a TPR hearing, it was very emotional and almost traumatic.
Yeah.
Could you imagine, as an adult, with the ability to manage your emotions and your feelings and process better, how that must be for a child?
Right.
Brutal. Regardless of what the parents have done or how it turns out.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, even I sometimes don't consider what this little child is going through, and and they can't process like we can.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, you're right. I think that the easier you can get them through that process.
When we come back, we're going to talk more about TPR after this. We're back today talking with Nick Venuti. He is an attorney. You're a GLA?
GAL, guardian ad litem. I do guardian ad litem too. Yes.
Yeah. I always get it confused, because when I volunteered in Haiti, I volunteered with GLA, which is God's Littlest Angels, and then we have GALs, and so I get all the G's and the L's and the A's mixed up, and then that's what it is. But we're talking about termination of parental rights. So that's one scenario, but you can have a whole bunch of different scenarios. Another scenario that we've ran across is where one of the parents has gone ahead and signed and terminated rights, but the other parent has not terminated rights. So how does that change things when, say, the mom has terminated rights, but the father hasn't done that, or they can't find the father, or they're not able to serve the father, or something like that?
Well, eventually, if they can't find the father, they can serve by publication, publishing in a newspaper. But in those cases where you have one parent that voluntarily signs, they'll usually, in Greene County at least, they'll hold that petition, the voluntary consent to termination of parental rights and adoption. And then when they try the termination, the involuntary on the other parent, they'll take that one up too, and it takes about 5 minutes. Usually the parent's attorney will get up there and say, I discussed this at length with my client, and they were of sound mind, not under the influence, there were no promises made, they had time to think about their decision and carefully thought it out, and they thought that that was the best interest of their child and themselves. And then the judge will accept that termination, and then the trial will proceed on the other parent that chooses to contest the termination.
Right.
So in the end, if the judge makes the decision to terminate both, it'll both be in the judgment. It will show as an involuntary termination against one and a voluntary termination against the other.
Adoptions take a while.
Yeah, they can.
I mean, we've had some that are really quick. 3 of our boys, I mean, it was boom, 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 and it was done. And they were adopted. And we've had some that it takes a couple of years. I mean, for everything to transpire, and some attorneys have quit, and they had to get new attorneys, and all of this stuff. And so I don't want anybody to get the idea that this is just going to be a quick thing. If it is, great. But prepare in your mind that this might take a while. This might take some time to get through the process.
Yeah, and I think also too, remember that throughout that whole process, those little eyes are watching you the whole time. And the decisions you made, for example, where you knew the right thing to do and you chose to go down that road, they watch you through those things, and they watch you if you do other things. So, you know, to lose your cool or to get upset, if that child is meant to be yours, it's going to happen.
Right.
And just always remember you're on stage.
Right.
And these kids have been through so much to get to that point. They need to see their foster parents as a strength.
Right. We had a little boy, it was the second kid we ever took in, and he was 2nd grade. And when I got him, he cussed me, he called me every name in the book, he kicked me, hit me, and he fell in love with our family. And the goal was reunification. And he was going home. And we knew he was going home. And he didn't want to go home. But you're exactly right. We had to do everything in our power to set him up for success when he went home. And he was watching how I interacted with his dad, and how I interacted with his mom, and how I interacted with his sisters and everything. And even though that's sometimes really, really hard, because I love that kid. I mean, that kid, if I was going to the store, he was the first one in the car with me. If I was going to mow the lawn, he wanted to be walking right beside me. He was my little buddy, but you're exactly right. You have to be the mentor, and you have to really, they're watching every move that you make, and hopefully we're making really good decisions so that they're set up for success when they go home with their family, and they're doing good things.
Yeah.
So it's been really good talking about TPR, and I know that there's so much more that we can
I
talk
think we
about.
could go on for hours.
Right.
Hours
Probably
on
could.
TPR.
But we will have you on again.
Okay. I
And-
love being here. Thank you very much.
And I think that you would be you have a lot of information. You've been doing this for a while, and we like the guy, so we usually invite him back. But it was good having you talking about TPR today. Remember, this summer you can catch Tristan and I on our summer tour. We'll be hitting 15 cities in your area. And so if you would like us to come, you can always email us right here at producer.fostertv@gmail.com, and we'll come to your city. Also, if you'd like us to come and do a 2-hour workshop with the bio parents in your area, Tristan and I would be more than glad to do that, and we'll be doing those on our tour as well. You can also catch our fundraiser in Nashville, Tennessee on Music Row.
Yes.
And that should be a really good one. We're going to be doing that at Legends on Music Row. Good friend of ours, and she's going to be giving back to the foster community. We'll be doing another fundraiser in Loveland, Colorado, which is my early stomping grounds from my
I'm
younger
excited
days.
to see those stomping grounds. let me tell
Right.
you.
And then we're hoping to have another fundraiser this summer in Florida, and have some good things there. My best friend lives there, and his wife is an awesome fundraiser, so you can look for us in those areas as well. If you have any show ideas or would like to be a guest on the show, you can also email us at producer.fostertv@gmail.com. Until Friday, we'll see you back here on Foster TV.